Imagine this for a second. You're a seasoned, world-class investor. Someone whose expertise is so sought after that they're willing to throw their money at you just for the opportunity to make a positive return. You're making millions of dollars by investing your clients' riches in the right place. A $100 bill is pocket change to you, and you could buy anything your heart desired. Well, for Barry Hunt, this was, for several years, his everyday life. To the outside world, he was the investing guru, a man who could turn water into wine and multiply your savings at a drop of a hat. However, behind the curtain, Hunt was operating something much more sinister. Because in reality, there was no investment company, no financial strategy, nor adherence to the law. And in this video, we'll show you exactly how Barry Hunt, also known as Jonathan R. Firestone, was able to make millions from a company that didn't even exist. Now, a great deal isn't actually known about Hunt's earlier life. However, what we do know is that before he was Barry Hunt, he actually went by the name Jonathan R. Firestone. Firestone was always into finance and built an early reputation for being able to create money from nothing. In the 1980s, for instance, he opened a number of seemingly legitimate businesses across New Hampshire. These were largely sole proprietorships under very generic names such as Northern Marine Electronics. Now, to the outside world, these businesses were legit and completely legal. However, behind the scenes, Firestone was actually using his companies to run a check kiting operation. Now, if you don't know what check kiting is, it's essentially a form of bank fraud where someone will write a check for more money than they hold in their bank account, before using a second check from a different bank account to cover that first check. It basically creates a flow of money that artificially increases your bank balance, allowing you to withdraw money that you never had in the first place before the checks eventually bounce. Through this scheme, Firestone was able to funnel literally tens of millions of dollars in deposits, leaving the bank holding an overdraft of more than $1 million. Money that went directly into his back pocket. So, in summary, it's safe to say that Firestone was always of a criminal mindset, willing to break every rule in the book to see more zeros in his bank account. Just a year later, however, Firestone would launch a whole new operation that would make his prior check kiting fraud look like a walk in the park. You see, despite conning his banks for over $1 million, Firestone wanted even more money. Now, to allow him to evade the banks that he had conned in years gone by, Firestone, at this point, changed his alias to Barry Hunt, essentially giving him a fresh start from which to commit more financial fraud. Under this new name, Hunt likewise began a new business under the name of Tool Search in 1996. Based in Reno, he operated the business from his house. Essentially, this business would buy liquidated items like TVs and sewing machines from insurance companies before selling them for a profit. He invited individuals to invest their money into funding these purchases, with the promise that he would split any profits from the later sale with them. Alongside this, he purported that Tool Search would distribute large generators to third world companies. Now, to generate new business, Hunt would send out a false prospectus to potential investors, promising fantastic returns of 8 to 10%, alongside the guarantee that their money would be insured. He would show new investors how his current clientele was already earning interest on their investments, and then ask them to recruit others to the initiative. And from the outside, the proposal was very attractive. He even went as far to show investors letters he received from the International Monetary Fund, suggesting that he had the opportunity to invest in diesel-powered light plants. However, as you've probably guessed by now, none of this was true. Hunt didn't buy liquidated items, nor did he resell them. He didn't make any profits, nor did he insure his investors' money. In reality, every dime that was invested in the company went directly into his back pocket. Oh, and those investors who supposedly earned interest also allied to get new investors trapped. All in all, Hunt was able to amass more than $1 million in less than 4 years. And in all that time, Hunt was seemingly able to evade even the slightest sniff of suspicion. High on the success, Hunt started becoming less careful with the way he flaunted his illegal winnings. Some sources, for instance, suggested that he began flashing his stacks of $100 bills during poker games, leaving those around him to contemplate just how he was able to amass so much cash. Hunt was confident that he was getting away with his crimes. However, unbeknownst to him, cracks were already beginning to form. Cracks that would later come to expose the lie he had built the foundation of his empire upon. Now, before we get into just how crazy things get, if you haven't already, please pound that subscribe button. It's completely free and it'll help prevent scammers from robbing you of your entire life savings. So please, do yourself a favour, subscribe or be scammed. You see, many of Hunt's clients were savvy investors. So, when their investments didn't make a return, or they were unable to withdraw their initial investment, speculations of what Hunt was actually doing with their money started to surface. As a result, several investors felt forced to turn to the FBI, who began to build a case against Hunt by collecting the investment brochures that were mailed to his victims, the cancelled checks and deposit records, and testimonies from third parties who claimed that he never purchased the liquidation goods he claimed to. Over the next few years, the authorities were able to build a strong enough case to bring him in front of the court. And so, in 2003, prosecutors in Nevada indicted Hunt on both mail and bank fraud charges. However, instead of going to court, which was understandable considering the empire that they were likely to uncover with minimal digging, Hunt decided to flee. He became a fugitive, running from the charges, the desperate hope of covering up the myriad of crimes he had committed over the years. Naturally, however, this was only a temporary fix. He could run, but he couldn't hide forever. And in December 2004, authorities finally apprehended Hunt in Ocala, bringing him back to Reno to face the charges he had been charged with. And in court, Hunt simply didn't stand a chance. When the authorities questioned him, they uncovered everything. The fake companies, the money he had illegally earned, and the multiple frauds he engaged in. As a result, Hunt pled guilty to charges of mail fraud and bank fraud, which affected more than 10 victims, and received a 76-month prison sentence. He was also ordered to pay a $2.9 million restitution order to reimburse those whom he had conned. If this wasn't bad enough, he was also ordered to serve 5 years of supervised release after his release from prison, as well as being ordered to help the victims recover their financial losses. Ultimately, greed got the better of Mr. Hunt. He pursued his financial goals with reckless abandon, leading him to get sloppy and forget to tie up loose ends. And, in the end, everything was taken away from him. His money machine, his hoard of cash, and even his freedom. Perhaps Barry should have learned from fellow scammer Ruja Ignatova, who almost single-handedly conned the entire globe for billions of dollars before disappearing off the face of the planet completely. Click the link on the screen now and I'll show you how a true con artist gets away with it.